Hello and welcome along to another end of season review from this FM22 One Club story with Hemel Hempstead Town with me, Daniel. It's part 61 today and we're going to look back at season 7 where remarkably, for the first time in a long time in one of these One Club stories, we've managed to gain back-to-back promotions. It's a rarity because of the way we manage the clubs normally. We quite often end up in situations where we're selling best players, which out of our hands has happened at times this year. But we've got a superstar striker and we had one of our signings that came in last summer deliver all above expectation until about the end of January. Those two things have meant we've just about got over the line, despite an unconvincing end to the season, and raided, as some teams were in League 2 last year, by an incredibly low points total to get second place and the final automatic spot. So if you're looking forward to seeing what we're going to do this summer, we're going to plan our transfer window, we're going to have a look at the official season review, and of course we've got a lot to digest because we lost some players during the season, we lost some even in the last episode to injury that will impact the start of next year too. And we're going to have a little look into training because I've been asked a few questions about that down in the comments in recent episodes. So I just want to show you in general terms what I do. We're not going to go into any great detail, but just to give you a bit of an overview. So if you're looking forward to all of that, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for daily FM22 content from two long-term stories. We had a massive episode, series defining you might say, in the head coach yesterday. So if you haven't seen that yet, I'll put it in the eye above. Please do go and check it out. And of course this one will be back in 2 days time. We're going to have a Sunday transfer special. And it's going to be a pretty exciting one, I think, because unlike last year where it was just adding a few youngsters, I think this will be a bit of an overhaul. And we've not been able to find those young stars this year either. So we'll talk about that in a moment, what we're planning to do this summer. You can find links to anything else you might have missed in the eye above. There's also the food channel, the football podcast and the Twitch channel too. But let's start by heading across to the season review. It should be here tomorrow morning. We've just finished our season. So let's see what's been made of a groundbreaking, record-breaking year at Hemel Hempstead Town. End of season review time. No trophy, but it's just as good. Second place and a successive promotion as we go straight from League 2 up to the Championship now. But let's have a look at the summer work because there is only one name that really deserves the special mention. And that is the man highlighted, Leon Bullock. He joined us as one of 4 youngsters that came in the summer. I would argue 3 of them have been overwhelming successes. 2 of them have been absolute superstars. Leon Bullock was outscoring Ricky J. Jones until his injury. Don't forget that. 13 assists and 20 goals in 29 starts. Came in to support Will Swan in the number 10 role. Immediately became the star of the team. And we do also have to be thankful for his injury at this point because we saw the dilemma with the offer from Burton being accepted by the chairman the day after the Thornley saga, which we'll get to later. We could have lost him. The injury, as inconvenient as it was, as much harder as it made our promotion push, it was crucial to us keeping him. I'm not hopeful for the summer. I just pray that it doesn't happen before we tick over to a championship club because his value will surely double. He's an excellent pro. He's not lost a lot from that injury, it's got to be said. And he's offered us wonderful support this season. What a player he is. An England under-18 international, 19 years of age. And for a player in his first senior season as a footballer, he's offered absolutely bundles of quality. But even if you look at the dynamics now, he's hoping he can be sold for a value that matches his price. The second one was Callon Hazeman, the only man we paid for this summer, £135,000. What a signing he was, by the way. Played 47 games altogether, 33 of them from the start. Real solid addition in midfield. We knew about him. We'd had him before on loan. We've managed to extend his contract for next season. He's improving all the time. And he looks like he's going to make us a big profit when he eventually does leave the club. Will Swan scored at the end in the last episode. Was a fantastic player again. I'm not sure he's ever going to be a championship footballer. He's one of those. I look at the path my club Luton Town took in real life. They got successive promotions at these 2 levels. And in the Championship, after a year or 2, you start to see these players move on. Gradually, slowly but surely. And I think Swan will end up being one of those. But 9 goals and 4 assists in the league has to be remembered how crucial a part he's played. Moving a bit further down, Ali Mellon, bit part player on loan but did well. Then we've got the other 2 youngsters. Bennett Sharif, 36 appearances, improved as the year went on. Maybe not developed quite as much as I'd like, but is going to be one for the future. Cammy Richardson, cruelly injured in the penultimate game of the year. He is now out for 7 months, and another player that we didn't expect to, but will have to replace in the summer. And it's a shame because he would have really come into his own next year, particularly if Hamilton had left the club. Lone players such as Thornhill will be staying next year, as is McDonough at right back. And we haven't even got Thornley mentioned here, because he was sold afterwards as well. I am so angry about this deal, because it didn't need to be done. The border content with the deal, how can they only give us a C for that player being sold? They sold him. We didn't want to let him go. They agreed the deal, and now they're saying it was satisfactory. I mean, it was brilliant if you agreed to it. You must have said it was too good to refuse. So Harry Thornley, rejected obviously to join us on loan again next season as it stands. And for someone who we saw as a future captain, who had the model citizen personality, was improving so quickly, to lose him after just half a year for what is probably a fraction of his value, it's really, really frustrating. So annoyed by that one. In terms of the other transfers out, there wasn't a huge amount really. A few backup players went, likes of Teddy Davey, James Daly, Gillespie, Jordan Stevens, the one big flop of the save. And to be honest, we've not really looked any weaker. So we have to say that we've made the right decisions there. In terms of loans out, there's a couple I'll be looking at next year. Josh Berry played a lot of football in non-league or in League 2. And the same for Bilal Jesus Garcia. We have seen with Brandon Bryan Moore, loaning is a better strategy this year. Players can develop and become first team level. So I'm just hopeful that we can continue that here with Hemel Hempstead. Moving on to the season results, it was a very low points tally again. 81 would have been enough to get us promoted. And really, that's pretty poor at League 1 level, certainly in second place automatically. Ricky J. Jones was the competition top scorer for us. I mean, what a player again. And when you consider we picked up 2 points in our first 4 games, we had winless runs even towards the run-in. We've managed to get a fantastic outcome. Charlton were the runaway leaders. They were so much stronger than everyone else. But if we can survive next season, sky's the limit, because we'll be able to bring in the funds, we'll be able to increase the facilities and everything else behind it, and then start to focus on developing our own players rather than relying on everyone else's. The FA Cup, disappointing this year, lost against Crawley when it had been postponed twice and we knew the outcome was a game against Arsenal. So that potentially is another facilities upgrade, another £1 million down the drain. In the League Cup, we went out of the first hurdle. We haven't got a strong enough squad to compete in that. And in the EFL Trophy, we went out in the second round. Let's move on to the biggest win, which is the biggest win of this career so far. A 6-0 victory away at Ipswich. Hat-tricks for Malcolm and Bullock as we put them to the sword, even without Ricky J. Jones that day. A 4-0 win against MK Dons was the match to remember in the EFL Trophy. Not sure why, it was largely a backup team. And in goal of the season, Arthur Reed, which was in a 4-0 victory against Accrington. Now, is that the game I said? There was an episode I came back and said we saw goal of the season. I'm going to have to go and look at it now, so you're going to have to accept my apologies. I thought you'd be able to click on it from that link, but we will go and check that goal in a moment. Rather surprisingly, our club reputation hasn't gone up. I really thought it would with promotion to the Championship, extra TV revenue and TV coverage, but maybe that will happen next season. The sponsorship is the same, the broadcast revenue up because we went up a league, match day commercial and corporate stuff all the same. The prize money never ticks over till later, annoyingly. And Ricky J. Jones, Javan Malcolm and Bullock are the 3 shirt sales. We've got to make sure we keep them, because otherwise we're going to lose a lot of money from that front as well. The best 11 for the season is as follows. No Alador Hamilton, which is maybe slightly harsh, but that team is exactly what I'd pick as my first 11. Maybe it's 2 from 3 in midfield, but the rest of it picks itself. In terms of accolades, anything new to get excited about? Just Bullock being brilliant. Highest transfer fee received for Thornley, but don't get me started on that. And player of the season, Ricky J. Jones. All the other stuff basically to Leon Bullock. So we finish our second successive promotion. Now, can we go and see that goal of the season? Because I want to know if it's the one I was thinking about. Okay, we've got the game up. Let's look at Arthur Reed's. I remember it being a special goal, but I don't know if this is the one. I hope it is, because there was the one that was a standout, and I'd be disappointed if that wasn't the one picked. Let's see it here, shall we? It is Swan on the left-hand side. Back to Hazeman. Out to Reed. Yeah, I think it is. I remember it now. What a goal that is. That's definitely the one we said was a contender. Delighted to see that get goal of the season, because it was one of those moments where I just said, wow. And I know it was against poor opposition, but that doesn't matter. 3 players into the overall best 11 squad, Ricky J. Jones into the starting lineup, Arthur Reed and Zach Geacock on the bench. I don't think there's anything else we really need to look at here other than the club vision and expectations. Wow, maybe our squad is a lot stronger than we think, because they're saying we should avoid relegation next year. As Hemel Hempstead Town going up to the Championship, we're not expected to battle bravely and be one of the bottom 3. We're expected to stay up. That seems incredibly optimistic, especially given the chaos off the pitch. So, I mean, we'll accept it. We haven't got a choice, but that is a very difficult and hard-pressed chairman. And considering what he's done to us off the pitch with Thornley and the likes, I really thought he'd give us a little bit of leeway here. So, hopefully we won't have another summer where he's talking about leaving the club and the fact that he wants a takeover during the transfer window. Just see what his status is at the moment. He's enjoying his role, so it's the next one up. It could very easily change at the click of a finger. Let's have a look though, as we mentioned, at training. We focused on the data hub and tactics and other things before. So I want to have a little look at training, because it's something you guys have mentioned to me before. You want to see a bit more of. So let's talk about it, what we do at Hemel Hempstead. So I've always been very clear that I don't often get too involved as a default plan in the team training. One of the reasons I try and build a really good coaching staff, and we've seen the benefits of that the last couple of years, is that I believe having a good coaching team can make up for the shortfall of not having players at their peak or players that are sublime at their level. What it also means is they're generally picking the right training schedules and you don't have to get too involved. So if we have a look at the training calendar, for example, we'll go back to previous weeks where we've played. I wouldn't generally get that involved in changing anything here. There are some occasions where, you know, the ones where you've got 2 or 3 games in a week, and normally they do it for you, but occasionally they want the players to play, where we'll just say, let's get a rest session in. So let's take an example here. You can see this Friday in the middle, we played Morecambe, and the Wednesday we played against Barnsley. Now, we weren't too bad, we had the rest day anyways, but then you can see on the Sunday they were doing physical training. Now, if we'd have had our injuries that we had 2 months prior at that stage, which we did do in February, probably around that Accrington game where Reed scored the goals, I'd also change that physical session to a rest one. Maybe do that as a sort of match review or something tactical or even a team bonding thing. So you can go 2 successive days without any sort of physical training. I find if you have that situation where your squad is knackered and they're all saying they might need an extended rest or to be sent on a week's holiday, yes, ideally you'd like to do that. You'd like to send them all away. But if you've got this game here, for example, and then you see, oh, actually, we've got 10 days off afterwards. So then I could send them on holiday, but I just need to get through this game with a strong squad. Then making those changes on the Sunday, having 2 days in a row where you don't have physical training, I often find can just do enough to get players to recover. Maybe not if it's 3 days, if it's Saturday, Tuesday, but if it's Saturday, Wednesday, that 4-day break, you can normally just about get away with it. So that's one of the little techniques I use. Also at the start of seasons, I'll add in extra sort of, normally early in the week if you've got a week between games. So say here, for example, Bristol Rovers to Peterborough. The early part of the season, the Monday or the Tuesday, I'll try and get an extra session in for sort of tactical work. For set pieces in particular, if you're focusing on being a tall side and creating opportunities from dead ball situations, then often I'll work on tactics and I'll work on set pieces. That normally works best around August and September. And there's no surprise, there's no magic formula. We always talk about the fact that we become strong from October onwards. That's because we've put in that work earlier. So the team is well drilled, and although we've sacrificed a couple of results early on, we normally know exactly what we're going to get from the 3rd month onwards. So that's something I'll always recommend, particularly if you've got a lot of turnover at the club, or as we did in League 2 when Ricky J. Jones joined, we had to change tactics. So at that point, we had to sacrifice the set pieces and just do tactical shape, tactical movement, attacking movement, defensive shape, and just get it done. As boring as it was, as much as we conceded a few set pieces the start of that League 2 season, the greater importance was placed on developing to a new tactic. This year, a lot more of the work was developing set pieces, because actually we were pretty good shape-wise and we didn't have a huge turnover of players. So only a brief introduction, and I will do it in a season at some point, but just so I hope that makes sense for you. The main bit I get involved is mentoring an individual. Now, I'm going to leave the mentoring groups for a later year because I've talked about them in previous seasons and I will do again in future. Individual training though is where I come into my own. So I used to be incredibly hands-on on this. I found this year, probably for the first time, that putting the additional focuses in, unless you're really dead set on something being improved, doesn't have a huge amount of change for you. So for us, we really wanted to focus on Liam Bullock's shooting because he was playing in that number 10 role. He wasn't the best finisher. And even though the assistants and coaches were going against it, we decided, look, this needs to be done. In terms of the rest, I generally leave that now to the coaches and I focus on this part because to me it's incredibly important that a player there's two reasons for changing this role and duty focus, either knows their position inside out if they're a regular starter, so say G-Cock as a sweeper keeper rather than a goalkeeper, McDonough as a fullback on support rather than a wing-back. But it's also, for those who aren't playing regularly, the slightly younger ones. I used players like Alidor Hamilton when he came in as an example. He was a ball-winning midfielder. I didn't know if he was going to be a starter, but I wanted him to be a box-to-box long-term. And being box-to-box, when he's got a mix of attributes that are pretty good defensively, but not the greatest offensively or going forward, means we can improve more attributes at once. And as a result of having the attacking ones on, he's now a better decision maker, a slightly better finisher, better at the long shots, and obviously box-to-box improves stamina too. So it's just about trying to get the most rounded players, as well as getting those who are focused entirely on their role. So it's actually got two completely contrasting purposes, depending on what players it's for. And generally, if there's not much between two roles, so for example, Ricky J. Jones and Malcolm, both will normally play as an advanced forward if they're in that role on their own, whereas occasionally they might have to be a poacher, so Malcolm if he's playing alongside Jones, for example. But advanced forward covers nearly all the attributes that are in a poacher's role anyway, and also gives you a bit more of a broad improvement across other attributes too. So that's why we've opted for advanced forward in that case rather than this specific role, because generally at this level we've got a lot of younger players, we've got a lot of players earlier in their development, and the strength for our club is the level of coaching. So to take advantage of it, we've got to improve these players as much as possible in as many areas as possible. So that's my opinion on training. The coaches, I always go and set up myself. I find where we might be able to get the best star rating in each area as a balance. So you can see here, the lead coach is not below 2.5 star in any area. And we also try and get the balance so the workload is light everywhere. That normally means me filling in the rest of the blanks. Once you get to the very top level, it's easy because you can get two coaches dedicated for each responsibility and just add yourself into any odd ones that are still average workload. But for now, we have to try and juggle about a bit. So that's what we do with training. The final thing we're going to look at though is arguably the most important, and that is what we plan to do in this summer transfer window. Now, going from League 2 to Championship, the immediate law is to just go and change the whole squad, which I don't think is the right strategy. But here we're going to have more change than we'd like because of things that have been taken out of our hands. So while we get to this screen, let me get the contract status up for you. We've got a couple of backup players that haven't agreed to sign deals yet, so Josh Berry being one of them, a youngster. We've also got problems with players such as Sol Alidor Hamilton, who won't sign a new deal unless it's ridiculous money, which that's player power. It happens occasionally, I'm afraid. And we've also got the uncertainty of, are people like Leon Bullock and Ricky J. Jones going to stay? Are they going to get big offers? If they do, we've seen the chairman's not afraid to take them out of our hands, which could be a big issue. We've then got some of our more experienced players leaving, and not having that age and losing those top players in the dynamics hierarchy is a massive issue for me. So if we have a look at the top of our one at the moment, we have got McDonough, Brian Wharton, Egan. Egan, we're not able to get back on loan at the moment, which is why, even though I wasn't sure on McDonough, I think Bennett Sheriff will be first choice. We had to get him back. We had to keep the team leaders there. We're losing Farquharson, who won't sign a new deal. We're losing Nydam, the captain, who won't sign a new deal. We're losing McGinley, an influential player who's past his prime and won't sign a new deal. So we are losing a lot of those influential players from this top end of the hierarchy. And when we're bringing in youngsters, when we're bringing in unproven players, not having some senior pros to work with can be a massive issue. Thankfully for us, we've got a few that will be staying, but there is going to be a big overhaul in this squad. What I'll quickly do is pick what I'd like to be left, and then we'll eliminate the ones that probably won't be here too. And this is where the enormity of the task sets in. So I've not picked here players that I'd like to start next year. This is what is set to be available as it stands. Now that also includes Leon Bullock not being sold under our nose. The same for Ricky J. Jones. That includes Berry signing a new deal, which I'd expect him to. And that also includes those with 1 year to go, not forcing their way out, like Hamilton suggests he might. It also shows why it's so important when you've got players like Camoy Richardson, who we're now going to have to replace for the first half of the season. And you can see there's a huge lack of experience there. We've got perhaps Sam Hornby as a backup keeper. Maybe some of our more experienced players now. Arthur Reed is going to be key in there in his late 20s. There are not a lot of those players who people can lean on in the dressing room. We're obviously looking at a situation where Thornley and Egan, two of the stars at the start of the season, won't be back on loan next year. Reading not willing to discuss with Egan. Thornley rejected us despite Norwich accepting. That situation entirely avoidable, but our chairman decided to sell him. So they're the obstacles we've got to overcome. I look at that 11. Obviously, I haven't got a centre-half in there at the minute. Let's say Thornley was in there too. Is that strong enough to stay up in the Championship? If Ricky J. Jones and Bullock play like this year, and maybe Arthur Reed too, then yes, certainly a lower bottom half team. But we'll have to outscore teams, because that defence is not Championship standard. Thornley would be a massive addition. Getting one more centre-half in would maybe make a difference. But we're incredibly weak, and we've got no depth in any area. We've got one fit sub-midfielder, which is Will Swan. We've got one fit sub-defender at the club, which is either McDonough or Bennett Sharif. And we've got Stuart Parry, a relatively injury-prone striker, who's there to rotate with Malcolm, who struggled to step up to League One. So there are some areas we need big improvements. We've not had the benefit that we had that first season, or that we had last year, where by this point we'd wrapped up deals for Bennett Sharif, for Richardson, for Thornley and Bullock. Those players aren't there getting released this year. And that's why I'm incredibly worried about what next season brings. I think staying up would be both an incredible achievement and a miracle. And to do it, these two players must either stay or be sold and come back on loan. And I don't know I'm going to get a say in that based on January. So let me know in the comments what you think based on that the limit of our expectation is next year. And where on earth do we get players from? We've got Chelsea as a new affiliate. We've already filled 2 loan spots for the match day, so we can't get more than 2 from them, really. And if we lose any of the other stars, we're in big trouble. I hope we can produce a miracle. We'll of course be back for the transfer special on Sunday. We've got a budget, we might have to dip into it. But I feel like the only way we're going to be able to replace players with an affordable structure is to probably bring in experience. And that didn't work great for us in League 2. But we might have to try and find the right heads this time. Hopefully Egan and Thornley can have a U-turn and we can get them back next year. If they're in our squad, I suddenly feel an awful lot better about our chances. Will they be though? We'll see next time and find out. I hope you'll come and join me for it on Sunday. But if you did enjoy this end of season review, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Let me know in the comments what you think of a very rare successive promotions in one of our One Club stories. And how have you adapted in your saves to changing 2 levels in 2 seasons? Because it's not something I often have to worry about. The financial benefits will be huge. We'll try and get some stuff done off the pitch. At the moment, we're waiting for the financial rewards to tick over. If you want to stay up to date and see how we get on though, subscribe down below and turn that notification bell on. Sunday, we'll see a transfer special and our Championship debut. And then through the next couple of weeks, we're going to see just how tough a test the second tier of English football will be. As I mentioned, we had a massive episode in the head coach yesterday. You can find a link to that in the eye above in the meantime. There's also links up there to the Twitch channel, the football podcast and the food channel too. Please do go and check them all out and follow and subscribe if you can. It does make a massive difference. And I'll see you next time for a new season with Hemel Hempstead Town. Championship football is on the horizon, but we are woefully underprepared.